Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're going to discuss how rewrites push project risks to the end and how that impacts your delivery. So, risk is a recurring theme on the show because our one of our theses is that you shouldn't do rewrite software because it's risky.
Right.
And we've covered that from a number of topics. And one of the early episodes, we'll have to look it up in the backlog, is that rewrites push risk to the end of the project because that's when it actually gets in the hands of the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got an example that I wanted to work through today where I'm involved with something that turned out to be a rewrite. And because it's a rewrite, the customers didn't get it involved, didn't see the product until it was like 95% complete. And
Mm-hmm.
now the customers have feedback. And the feedback is at risk of derailing the entire project.
So I want to pause there for a second.
Yeah.
And if it's a rewrite and they were just, presumably we were rewriting something to keep parity with the old system, why did
It
we want feedback?
it was not to keep parity.
Oh, okay.
This was two related things where so it's a report. So one,
Mm-hmm.
the report hadn't been updated in many years and it was out of date. It was ugly and it needed to show different data. Like it was visually ugly and it didn't show the data that they really wanted it to. And so it needed to be replaced, updated. And then additionally, the backend service was the technology wasn't able to keep up and make the reports display the data quick enough,
Okay.
which are two unrelated problems that got pushed together to justify a full rewrite. And so
Why didn't
because
you
of
just
that,
fix it in the old system?
well, so that right.
All right, go
So
ahead.
the report could have been refreshed with the old system. It still would have been extremely slow. It would have been unacceptably slow. And so, musketeering at its best,
Mm-hmm.
the the argument was made of, oh, well, if we have to replace the whole front end because it needs to be updated, and we don't, it just needs a full refresh. It needs to show different data. We need to do that, and for technology reasons, we need to replace the back end because it's not the technology we have isn't fast enough. Instead of doing those two things iteratively and independent of each other, let's
Mm-hmm.
save time. The siren song of saving time and being faster and better. We'll do it all in one giant rewrite, and it'll be faster. And this show is all about, well, it's not going to be faster. Like it's never going to be faster.
There must just be some sense of drama of like, we have this whole thing and we're just going to deliver it all together and it's going to be amazing and blow your mind.
Yes.
And that's just not a good way to to write code.
Well, one thing I've been hammering on in my blog is if you're running a SaaS, the idea of a grand reveal, we're going to do this giant release and it's going to blow your mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's in violation of the entire principle and the idea behind SaaS, which is that you always have the latest software and that you're going to continually get upgrades and updates.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right? When you have software that gets released, or in way back when they would ship it on a floppy disk or a CD, or even when you had to install it on prem, you'd do it like quarterly. It's like, oh yeah, you have to have this big release. It's got to have all these shiny new features. In SaaS, having storing up all these features to have a giant shiny release, it violates the very principle of a SaaS.
Right. I want to get back to the concept again, though, of the feedback from the customer, real quick, because you're basically saying that that derailed the project.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, like, why was there feedback from the customer even on what's going to change? Why did that come so late? Why didn't? What was there not like a demo of what the changes were going to be that was already run by the customer beforehand?
There was not.
Okay.
So because they were not iterating and replacing the existing report, the customer saw the old report one day, and then the next day they saw the new report, and it had been sprung upon them full and complete in its
Okay.
speedy and it showing different data.
Got
And when the customer saw the new report, they said, wow, it's really speedy and it looks very pretty.
it.
But some of the data that you're showing me on this page isn't the data that I want you to show on this page. Some of the way you're calculating time and what comes in and stays out or what counts isn't the way that other people do it. It's not the standard way, or it's not the way I want it. And it's not that
Right.
the right. This isn't a case of bugs. There was a spec. The developer wrote the spec, and the numbers are correct. It's just the numbers are not what the customer wants. Those aren't the numbers. Those aren't the droids you're looking for. Those aren't
It's
the
a
numbers
business bug.
yeah. It's a business bug.
Right. That's a fun one. I haven't thought of that before.
A product bug. Well, it's not even
Yeah.
and this is a standard thing. Is the first time you show customers anything new, they're going to have feedback,
Right.
which is why you want to show it to them as early in the process as possible, when it's cheaper and easier to change it because you've got less of it complete.
That it's kind of like what Slack does when they have like this kind of slow releases of new designs and everyone complains about them always because no one
Mm-hmm.
likes change. But you get
Yes,
feedback kind of early before they kick it in for everybody, you know?
exactly. But because it
So,
was a rewrite, you couldn't show the new report until you had
mhm.
the new backend. And so
So you had a
they
big bang
they
cut over.
slipped
Yeah.
together.
Yep.
But the two of them individually were big projects, and individually they could have been iteratively developed, but because they were together, they had to be released together, and so the release came very late.
Yeah, and we can even see now, I guess, talking about it, because you were saying those two were tied together, like the refresh of the ugliness of the reports and
Mm-hmm.
the speed of the back end. If you did do just a refresh of the ugliness of the report first, then you could
Mm-hmm.
get that feedback. You can get that done first. The back end still
Mm-hmm.
being slow, that's fine. We'll solve that later. Get the feedback from the customer, and then use that before. And you're breaking down those like in between different weeks as you get the feedback instead of at the end.
Right, a more iterative approach would have been change the report, get the feedback about what is or isn't good about the report, and then
Hmm.
make the report fast.
Right. Make it work, make it right, make it fast. That, basically,
That
the
is
order.
that is a standard thing. Yeah, make it work, make it right, make it fast. And but they lost out on that opportunity because they tried to make it right and fast at the same time.
Yep.
Or alternatively, they could have made the existing report fast and then iterated to make it better.
Right. So how did this derail the project at the end? Like the feedback, did they just take it and go, "Oh, we can't release," or what's going on there?
Well, there's a deadline for the project. Like it has to be done by a certain point because there's a
Hmm.
code freeze coming up. It's getting to the end of the year, and it needs to be
Oh,
done.
right.
And so and a certain percentage of the customers have already had it rolled out. Oh, I left out a giant detail. So in this
Hmm.
example that I'm dealing with, there's also a problem with the back end. The back end is 30 times more expensive than estimated. And so we cannot
Whoa.
release it in generally.
So, this reminds me of that resource engineering conversation from a couple
Mm-hmm.
of episodes ago about understanding if the solution that you have is financially feasible. How much does it cost to deliver that? Because a lot of engineers aren't thinking that. They think I can make that work. I have the tools
Mm-hmm.
to make that work, but they're not the ones with the wallet.
Right. In this case, the original solution was MySQL,
Hmm.
and MySQL was not designed and powerful enough to do the data computations needed. So a new database was selected, and then it turned out that it also was not the correct solution.
Hmm.
But instead of kind of acknowledging and like, oh, well, we should go back to the drawing board on it, the developers pushed forward anyway. And they came up with a solution that made it work. But because of all the externalities of making it work, the cost of running that solution ballooned. And so,
Hmm.
hammering the I'll call it the square peg of this database into the round hole of the requirements, caused it to become untenably expensive.
So it sounds like it's not going in for the last quarter release before code freeze.
Well, maybe.
Mm.
So here we have the two pieces of the rewrite where the view of the report is done, but now customers have feedback on it. And the back end, which is tightly coupled to it, has a problem in that way it's too expensive to release. So they've got like the beta group and they've got it and they're happy. But we can't release it further because it's too expensive. And so now I'm involved, and the solution I pushed is, hey, there was no reason to make the front end work. Like there was no requirement that the front end needed the new back end. We could separate those two and make the front end work against the old back end. As we said before, it will be unacceptably slow, but that's unacceptably slow, just like the current version is. Right? Solve one problem at a time.
That makes sense to me.
And then this is where we now have the two system problem, and changes become extremely expensive because you have to change it in the old, two places. Yeah. Or not.
Yeah. It always comes back to these same problems every time.
it comes back. You combine multiple problems, and then you have problems that are combined, and they become more. They musketeer. It's all for one and one for all, and you either get all or you get none, and it becomes intractable because you put it together.
Right. I think if I was presented these options, like, oh, here's what we did and here's what we can do. We can roll back, we can change this, we can push forward. I think I kind of acknowledge, oh man, how did we get feedback this late? How did we end up with a solution that got so expensive that we didn't plan on that? And use it kind of as like almost a post-mortem kind of thing. But in the end, it feels like the safe thing to do is what you're describing. First of all, just go back to the old system because people were using it and they were fine with it probably for many years, even though it was slow. Mm-hmm. Now it's not frustratingly different and expensive. And then, as you're suggesting, just work on delivering that front-end piece. And then even while you're delivering the front-end piece too, you can have the back-end engineers discussing a solution that might be more financially tenable now that they have some bulked time because of the failure of not releasing the full thing. That seems reasonable to me, unless somebody's just really gunning to get this thing out for arbitrary reasons.
No, that is, you've exactly described the plan, the solution. It's more of a plan. It's not that's the iterative approach that I've been pushing. I'm like, look, we're going to iterate. We're going to do this thing, and we're not even going to release the whole front end to the customer all at once. We're going to release it one page at a time.
Is this something that you recommended months before, and you end up kind of just like they delivered it coupled anyway, or like what was your advice on this case, to begin with? Okay,
it was when I first saw the proposal. I said these two things don't need to be coupled. You could deliver them independently, and the pushback I got was, hey, if we deliver them independently, the new report will look nice, but it'll be very slow, which is true. And it'll be faster. The project will be faster and better if we do it together.
Well, I feel like, so I mean, is this the same thing as saying the new report would look nice, but it would be just as slow as before?
Yes.
Okay, so you've improved one piece. Like I don't get the pushback. I don't know. Sure. Okay.
Yes, I've got a blog post on Sherman on Software where I talked about this. The phrase that was used was turd frosting. We would be frosting a turd and then iterating to a cupcake. And I was like, yes, exactly. You understand exactly what I'm talking about. That is exactly what we're going to do.
But see, like the insanity of that to me, excuse the word, I guess, is like you're suggesting let's improve one piece, and then someone's pushing back and saying, but that means we can't improve two pieces at the same time. And you're like, exactly. Why?
Yes.
I mean, again, it seems like to be just for the sake. I mean, like maybe playing devil's advocate. If they can deliver both at the same time in the same time frame, then they could squeeze that in there at the timeline. But then that hits the risk part. This was the risk piece where they've gambled. If we
Right.
couple them, we're gambling that we're going to get this thing done in time, and the gamble failed. It was a good
Correct.
attempt, but the gamble failed. And it's safer
Well,
to
I
do
don't know
it
if
the way you
I would
approached it.
say that it's a good attempt because with
I'm
rewrites,
being nice. I'm being nice.
well, with rewrites, this is the problem
Yeah,
is they become very brittle. It either all works or it all doesn't,
yeah,
and you're gambling, and it's a
right.
gamble where the risk is at the end.
Yep. So break it into pieces. I mean, it just makes it's not as dramatic. I'll give them that. It's not as dramatic if you just release some pieces, but it's just so much safer. And I
Right.
feel like we've had many stories on this podcast now that kind of really hammer down that point.
And to go one further, if you're working in SaaS, which I believe many of our listeners are, most, it's holding off, saying I'm going to give the customer no new features so that I can give them giant new features later. It's a violation of the very fundamental principles that underlines like SaaS and the subscription model, which is continuous upgrades and improvements. Holding
Right.
back for dramatic flair is harmful to your customers, and you shouldn't do it.
I like that. That's a good quote.
Yes. Awesome. Should we leave it there?
I think so, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.